Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we share a tale of love, betrayal, and resilience. It's a story of Sarah Thompson, a woman whose world was turned upside down when she discovered the truth about her husband and her maid. But what follows is a journey of pain, self-discovery, and ultimately, strength. This story reminds us that even in the face of betrayal, we have the power to rebuild our lives. So, sit back and listen as we dive into Sarah's journey. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. In a small town nestled on the outskirts of New York, Sarah Thompson was known by many as a woman of kindness, generosity, and warmth. Her home was a sanctuary of comfort, always filled with laughter, and most notably, the loving atmosphere she fostered with the people in her life. Her maids, in particular, were treated not as mere employees, but as part of the family. Sarah had learned early in life that kindness, when shared genuinely, had a way of returning itself tenfold. And so, she made it a point to show everyone around her respect and understanding. Among the people Sarah held dear was Emma, her maid. Emma had been working with Sarah for several years, having come from a small town herself. She was hardworking and diligent, someone who took immense pride in her work. Emma never complained, always making sure every task was completed on time. Whether it was cleaning the windows or ironing the linens, Sarah noticed her dedication and found herself deeply appreciative of the woman's quiet loyalty. And so, it became natural for Sarah to show her gratitude in ways that went beyond a mere paycheck. She would sometimes give Emma generous bonuses for her hard work, or take her out to lunch on Sundays, giving Emma a break from the monotonous tasks of cleaning and organizing. During these lunches, Sarah would ask about Emma's family, her struggles, and the challenges she faced. Emma, in return, would open up, sharing her personal life and the weight of the burdens she carried. For Emma, Sarah had become something of a mother figure, someone she could confide in without judgment. Sarah's listening ear was a rare gift, one that Emma had not often encountered in her life. In those quiet moments, as they sat in quaint cafes or strolled along the tree-lined streets of their town, Sarah would offer words of encouragement. She had a way of comforting people, making them feel seen and heard. It wasn't just the grand gestures that made Sarah's kindness so profound, but the quiet moments of genuine concern. Emma felt deeply valued, not just as an employee but as a person. Their relationship, over time, evolved from that of an employer and employee to something more akin to friendship. Emma would often visit Sarah's home during the evenings after work, joining the family for dinner. Michael, Sarah's husband, would joke around, teasing Sarah for spoiling Emma. "She's practically part of the family at this point," he'd say, and both Sarah and Emma would laugh, the room filling with a sense of easy camaraderie. Emma felt welcomed, loved, and cared for, things she had not been accustomed to in her life before. Sarah would take her shopping on weekends, sometimes spending hours in boutiques, trying on clothes and accessories. Emma loved those days. They made her feel like she was part of something bigger than herself, something safe and secure. But beneath Emma's smile, there was a storm that Sarah did not know existed. For, as much as Sarah showered her with kindness, Emma had developed feelings for Michael, her husband. At first, Emma convinced herself that it was a fleeting thought, something she could dismiss. Michael was kind and handsome. Yes, but he was married. He was Sarah's husband, a man whom she admired and respected deeply. However, as the days turned into weeks and their interactions grew more frequent, Emma began to feel something deeper. It was wrong. She knew that, yet, her heart betrayed her, drawing her closer to him in ways that she could not control. And so, Emma started finding excuses to be near Michael, to spend time with him under the guise of helping with this or that. At first, their interactions were innocent, small conversations here and there. But soon, they grew more intimate. The stolen moments when Sarah was away became moments of forbidden connection. Brief whispers exchanged, their eyes lingering a little too long. Michael, too, found himself drawn to her in ways that he hadn't expected. What started as an innocent flirtation became something more. And in those moments, when they shared stolen kisses in the quiet corners of the house. Emma felt like she was on top of the world. For a brief moment, she was someone important, someone loved, but deep down, a seed of guilt was planted. She was betraying Sarah's trust. And she knew it. Sarah, of course, had no idea. To her, everything was as it had always been. She saw Emma growing more distant at times, acting strangely, but attributed it to personal issues Emma might have been facing. Sarah, being the compassionate woman she was, would offer help. If there's anything you need, Emma, you know I'm here for you, she'd say, oblivious to the true nature of the problem. But Emma, trapped in the web she had woven herself, would always smile and assure Sarah that everything was fine, despite the growing turmoil inside her. Sarah could feel a subtle change in the air. Emma's once bright and attentive demeanor was now clouded with distraction. She had become quieter, withdrawn. The warmth in her eyes had begun to fade. And Sarah, ever the perceptive woman, couldn't help but notice the shifts. Yet, she chose to believe Emma's reassurances that nothing was wrong. After all, Emma had been her trusted friend for so long. Why would she lie? As the weeks passed, Emma's internal struggle intensified. The affair with Michael had deepened, and she found herself torn between the growing affection she had for him and the guilt that weighed on her conscience. The lies she had told Sarah to cover her tracks were becoming harder to maintain. But she couldn't bring herself to stop. Every stolen moment with Michael felt like a high that she couldn't resist. Yet each moment also filled her with shame. She could never tell Sarah the truth. Not now. Michael, too, was caught in a delicate web of deceit. He had become enamored with the attention and affection Emma showered upon him. At first, it had been harmless enough, just a bit of flirting, a few playful comments here and there. But those small moments slowly turned into something more, something forbidden. He began justifying his actions, telling himself that he still loved Sarah and that the affair didn't mean anything. It was just a fleeting indulgence, something that filled a void he hadn't realized was there. But with each passing day, he sank deeper into the lie. He started to see Emma more frequently, sneaking away when Sarah was occupied or when she was out of town for business. The secrecy added to the excitement. But what Michael didn't realize was that Emma had her own plan. While he was wrapped up in the thrill of the affair, she was playing a long game. Emma wasn't in love with Michael, she was in love with what he could give her. His wealth, his position, the life he could offer, it all fueled her desires for a better life. Over time, Emma began to manipulate him, using her charm and beauty to secure lavish gifts and an extravagant lifestyle. Michael, blinded by the affair and his own desires, had no idea that he was being used. He was still trying to justify his actions to himself, telling himself that it was just a momentary lapse, that everything would go back to normal once it was over. He thought he could manage the situation, keep both his wife and his affair with Emma hidden. But Emma had other plans. She knew exactly what she was doing. She began to demand more from Michael, urging him to take her on expensive vacations, buying her designer clothes, and even helping her pay for an apartment of her own. Michael, under the illusion that this was a normal, albeit secret, relationship, readily complied. He used their joint bank accounts to fund her lifestyle, without realizing that he was financing Emma's manipulation. Each time Sarah asked about the finances, Michael brushed her off, convincing her that there were just some discrepancies or small expenses they needed to adjust. What Michael didn't realize was that Emma wasn't just using him for money. She was also using him to build a future with someone else, a man named Alex. Alex was a businessman who had caught Emma's eye long before she ever met Michael. He was handsome, confident, and knew how to play the game of wealth and power. Emma had been seeing Alex in secret, all the while keeping Michael under the impression that he was the center of her world. The two of them would laugh and joke about how easy it was to deceive him, how effortlessly she had him wrapped around her finger. But as the months passed, Michael began to notice things that didn't add up. He would see Emma laughing with Alex, a man she always claimed was just a friend. He would catch her talking to him in secret, her body language betraying the true nature of their relationship. Michael was starting to wake up to the truth, but he was too caught up in his own guilt and self-deception to confront it head-on. It was easier for him to ignore the signs than to face the reality of what was happening right in front of him. In those moments, when he would find himself staring at Emma and Alex from a distance, a cold realization settled in. He had been played. Emma had never loved him. She had never been interested in him beyond what he could give her. And yet, he had let it happen. He had allowed himself to be deceived, to live a lie, while his wife Sarah, who had trusted him and loved him unconditionally, remained completely unaware of his betrayal. Michael couldn't help but feel the weight of his actions. But as the guilt slowly crept in, it was clear that there was no going back. The damage had already been done. The day Sarah discovered the truth was one that would change her life forever. She had always trusted Michael, believed in their marriage, and had been confident that Emma, her maid and confidant, was a loyal friend. But all of that came crashing down in a single moment. It was an afternoon, much like any other, when Sarah walked into the living room after returning from an errand, only to find Emma and Michael wrapped in each other's arms on the couch. The room froze in that moment, the air thick with betrayal. Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach as her eyes locked on the scene before her, unable to process the painful reality unfolding. For a long time, Sarah stood there, motionless, her breath caught in her throat. The world seemed to spin around her, and the anger and hurt felt like a suffocating weight in her chest. The images of all the times she had welcomed Emma into her home, treated her like a friend, confided in her, and trusted her, all seemed like cruel lies. Sarah's mind raced through the memories of Emma's laughter, her help with the children, the shopping trips they'd shared, and now, it all felt like a carefully constructed facade. Emma had played her, and Sarah had let her in. The truth was undeniable. Her husband, Michael, and her maid, Emma, had betrayed her in the most painful way imaginable. Sarah looked from Emma to Michael, the shame in their eyes cutting through her more deeply than any words ever could. Michael, at first, seemed like a man who had shrunk before her, his guilt written on his face. Emma, too, seemed hesitant, almost as though she was trying to find the words to explain her actions, but there was nothing that could justify what had happened. "Don't," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking with the rawness of her emotions. "Don't say anything, just get out of my house." Emma, looking lost and devastated, turned to Michael for a moment, but without saying a word, she ran out of the room, tears streaming down her face. Michael, stunned by the force of Sarah's words, tried to follow Emma, but Sarah stopped him cold. "You're not going anywhere," she said, her voice firm, though trembling with anger. "You're going to stay right here and explain to me what's been going on." Michael stood frozen for a moment. Then, slowly, he began to speak. "I'm sorry. I don't know how it happened. It started. And I couldn't stop it." His voice was barely audible, filled with remorse. Sarah's eyes flared with disgust, and she stepped closer to him. "You couldn't stop it?" she repeated, her voice cold as ice. "That's not an excuse. That's not a reason. You're a grown man. You made a choice. You chose to betray me, to lie to me, to break my trust." Michael looked at her, his face filled with tears. But Sarah's pain was too overwhelming to feel any sympathy. The man who had once been her partner, her confidant, had shattered her heart in the worst way possible. She didn't care about his apologies or his reasons. She only cared that he had hurt her deeply. In the days that followed, Sarah was consumed with an unbearable weight. Every moment felt like an emotional earthquake, leaving her shaken and unsure of who she could trust. Her home, which had once been a place of comfort, now felt like a battlefield. Sarah could not bring herself to even look at Michael without the flood of anger and sadness overtaking her. Yet, in the midst of all the hurt, she knew she couldn't stay in this limbo forever. Something had to change. As weeks turned into months, Sarah's emotions were a whirlwind. She no longer recognized the woman who had been so trusting and kind. The betrayal had stripped away her sense of security. And with that came the painful realization that she had to rebuild her life from the ground up. She started by kicking Michael out of the house. Though his pleas for forgiveness echoed in her mind, she couldn't hear them anymore. Her pain was too raw, too overwhelming. Sarah threw herself into her own healing. Not for anyone else, but for herself. She began attending therapy, practicing yoga to calm her nerves, and reconnecting with friends who had long since been neglected. Slowly, she started to regain a sense of herself, of who she was outside of the roles of wife and mother. She realized that she was stronger than she had ever given herself credit for. She didn't need Michael to define her happiness. She didn't need the betrayal of Emma to ruin her future. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt a sense of liberation. She didn't need anyone's validation to feel worthy. Through all the pain, she found a peace within herself. She learned that sometimes, the greatest strength comes from standing alone, learning to trust herself again. As time passed, the anger faded, though the scars of betrayal would never fully heal. Sarah knew she would move forward, not because she had forgiven Michael or Emma, but because she had learned that her value was not determined by the people who hurt her. She was enough, just as she was. In the end, Sarah emerged from the depths of betrayal stronger and more resilient than ever. She learned that the love and trust she had given to others did not define her worth. And that true strength came from within. The pain of her past never fully disappeared, but it no longer held her captive. Sarah learned to forgive herself for not seeing the signs, for allowing herself to be vulnerable, and for trusting those who ultimately betrayed her. As she moved forward, Sarah began to embrace her independence and build a new life. She no longer feared the unknown or the possibility of being hurt again. She knew that she was capable of navigating life's challenges on her own, and that she was deserving of love and respect, not only from others, but from herself. Her heart had been broken, but it had also been healed, slowly but surely, and while she would never forget the betrayal, Sarah now understood that her life was hers to shape. She was not defined by the actions of others, but by the strength and resilience she had found within herself. If you found this story meaningful, be sure to subscribe to our channel to follow more life stories and lessons on resilience, love, and personal growth. Every story shared is a reminder that no matter what life throws at us, we have the power to rise again.